Marcus Thompson had never asked for recognition. For 3 decades, his hands had been stained with motor oil and transmission fluid, his back ached from countless hours bent over engine blocks, and his dreams had been postponed indefinitely. At 53, he was the owner of Thompson's Auto Works, a modest but respected garage tucked away in the industrial district of Baltimore, Maryland. To most people, including his own family, Marcus was just a mechanic, a blue-collar worker who fixed cars and came home dirty. What they didn't know could have filled volumes. The morning sun cast long shadows across the garage floor as Marcus arrived at 5:30 a.m., just as he had every day for the past 30 years. The familiar scent of motor oil and rubber greeted him like an old friend. His employees wouldn't arrive for another 2 hours, giving him precious time alone with his thoughts and his secret project, a 1967 Shelby GT 500 that sat covered in the back corner of the shop. This wasn't just any restoration project. 3 months ago, Marcus had been approached by producers from American Classic Revival, a nationally syndicated television show that featured the country's most talented restoration experts. They had heard about his work through underground car enthusiast circles, seen the photos of his previous restorations that had won award after award at shows he attended quietly, always alone, never mentioning them to family. The deal was worth $2.8 million over 3 years, with additional bonuses for each successfully completed project. The contract sat locked in his office safe, alongside bank statements that would have shocked anyone who knew him. Marcus had always been smart with money, investing his earnings wisely, living well below his means, and secretly amassing a portfolio that would have made his condescending brother-in-law, a financial advisor who never missed an opportunity to give Marcus friendly advice about planning for the future, choke on his expensive scotch. But the money wasn't what mattered most to Marcus. It was what he had done with it over the years that defined him. His nephew, Tyler, now 28, had been his responsibility since Tyler's father, Marcus's brother, had died in a construction accident when Tyler was just 3 years old. Marcus had stepped up without hesitation, becoming the father figure Tyler needed, or so he had thought. Every soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference, Marcus had been there. When Tyler's mother, Sharon, had struggled with depression and alcohol dependency following her husband's death, Marcus had quietly paid for her rehabilitation, covered their mortgage, and ensured Tyler had everything he needed. The investment had been staggering. Marcus kept meticulous records in a leather journal hidden in his home office. Private school tuition from kindergarten through high school, $180,000. College tuition at Johns Hopkins, $240,000. The car for Tyler's 16th birthday, the apartment during college, the bail money when Tyler had been arrested for drunk driving at 19, the lawyer fees, the second rehabilitation attempt when Tyler had developed a cocaine problem at 22, the third attempt at 24, it all added up to well over $420,000, not counting the everyday expenses, the birthday gifts, the family vacations Marcus had funded but rarely enjoyed. Tyler had graduated with a degree in business administration, but his substance abuse issues had derailed every opportunity. Marcus had called in favors, gotten Tyler interviews, even guaranteed his salary at a friend's company for 6 months. Each chance had been squandered, each failure blamed on everyone but Tyler himself. The workshop phone rang, pulling Marcus from his reflection. It was Dr. Patel's office, confirming his appointment for the following week. The headaches had been getting worse, the dizzy spells more frequent. Marcus had been putting off the appointment for months, but the episode last week, when he nearly collapsed while working on a transmission, had finally convinced him to seek help. He hung up the phone and walked to the Shelby, running his hand along its primer-coated surface. This car would be his masterpiece, the one that would establish him as more than just a neighborhood mechanic. The television producers had given him creative freedom and a budget that would allow him to source original parts from around the world. It was everything he had dreamed of since he was a boy, watching his own father work on cars in their cramped garage in West Baltimore. Marcus's father, Samuel Thompson, had been a mechanic too, but one who had died young, at 52, just a year younger than Marcus was now, from a heart attack brought on by years of stress and overwork. Samuel had taught Marcus everything about engines, but more importantly, he had taught him about loyalty, hard work, and taking care of family. Family first, Marcus, his father would say, his hands covered in grease as he worked late into the night to earn extra money. Blood is blood. You take care of your own, no matter what. Those words had been Marcus's gospel, his north star through every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dream deferred. But gospels, Marcus was beginning to learn, could become chains when the congregation had no faith in return. Sunday dinners at his sister Angela's house in Roland Park had become Marcus's weekly persecution. The Victorian row house, with its perfectly manicured garden and restored interior, was a stage where Marcus's perceived failures were performed for an audience of family members who had grown comfortable with their roles. Uncle Marcus, Tyler would say, arriving late as always, his eyes glazed with the telltale signs of his latest indulgence, still driving that beat-up truck? Man, you need to upgrade. It's embarrassing when you park that thing outside. The neighbors probably think we're having work done. The laughter would ripple through the dining room, Sharon's nervous giggle, Angela's husband Robert's hearty guffaw, the cousin's snickers. Marcus would smile tightly and focus on his plate, counting the minutes until he could politely excuse himself. Angela, his younger sister by 5 years, had married well. Robert was a successful real estate developer who never let anyone forget it. Their house was featured in Baltimore magazine, their children attended Gilman School, and their vacation photos from Martha's Vineyard and Aspen decorated the walls like trophies. Marcus, Robert would say, cutting his steak with surgical precision, I've told you before, if you want, I could help you expand your business. Get you into fleet maintenance contracts. Real money, not just these one-off jobs you're doing. I appreciate it, Robert, but I'm doing fine, Marcus would respond, the same dance they performed 100 times. Fine is relative, Robert would chuckle. I mean, you're what, 53 now? What's your retirement plan? You can't turn wrenches forever. What Robert didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Marcus's retirement plan could buy Robert's house 3 times over. The automotive restoration business had been lucrative long before the television deal. Collectors from around the country sought out Marcus's expertise, paying premium prices for his discretion and perfectionism. He had restored cars for NFL players, Wall Street executives, and tech entrepreneurs, all of whom valued his ability to keep their expensive hobbies private. But the true cruelty came from Tyler, whose contempt for Marcus had grown in direct proportion to Marcus's generosity. The more Marcus gave, the less Tyler respected him. It was as if Tyler's substance-dulled mind had convinced him that Marcus's support was not love but obligation, not sacrifice but what was owed to him. You know what your problem is, Uncle Marcus? Tyler had said at last month's dinner, his words slightly slurred. You never took any risks. You played it safe your whole life. Fixing other people's cars instead of designing them. Following instead of leading. That's why you're still in that little garage while everyone else moved on. The words had hit Marcus like physical blows. Tyler was wearing a $3,000 watch Marcus had bought him for his college graduation, living in an apartment Marcus paid for, driving a car Marcus maintained for free. The irony was so thick it could have been cut with a knife, but pointing it out would have been futile. In Tyler's mind, revised by years of entitlement and substance abuse, Marcus's support had become as invisible as Marcus himself. Sharon, Tyler's mother, would occasionally attempt weak defenses. Tyler, don't talk to your uncle that way. He's been good to us. But the defenses were performative, lacking conviction. Sharon had grown comfortable in her role as the struggling widow, even though her struggles had largely ended when Marcus had taken over the financial burden of raising her son. She worked part-time at a boutique in Hampton, a job that provided spending money and social interaction more than necessary income. The mortgage on her Guilford home had been mysteriously paid off 10 years ago, a life insurance policy from her late husband that had never existed but that Marcus had invented to preserve her dignity. The family's treatment of Marcus had become so normalized that even the younger generation participated. Angela's teenage daughters would roll their eyes when Marcus spoke, exchange knowing glances when he mentioned anything about cars or the garage. They had learned from their parents and cousin that Uncle Marcus was someone to be tolerated, not respected. During one particularly painful dinner, Tyler had brought his latest girlfriend, a Georgetown law student named Brittany who wore designer clothes and spoke with the practiced confidence of someone who had never faced real hardship. "So, Mr. Thompson," she had said, her tone polite but condescending, "Tyler tells me you've been a mechanic your whole life. That must be fulfilling in its own way." "It has been," Marcus had replied simply. Tyler had laughed. "Fulfilling is one word for it. Uncle Marcus is old school. Still does everything by hand, doesn't even have a computer system for inventory. It's like stepping back in time when you visit his shop." What Tyler didn't know was that Marcus's shop had been fully digitized for 5 years, with a state-of-the-art diagnostic system that cost more than most people's cars. Marcus simply chose not to mention it, just as he chose not to mention the classic car shows where he was treated like royalty, the restoration forums where his username was legend, or the six-figure offers he regularly turned down from collectors wanting to buy his personal collection. The headaches had started 6 months ago, mild at first, easily dismissed as stress or fatigue. Marcus had ignored them, just as he had ignored the chest pains that occasionally gripped him during particularly stressful family gatherings, just as he had ignored the growing sense that his life was slipping away while he served others who didn't even see him. His doctor, an old friend from high school named Jerome, had been warning him for years. "Marcus, your blood pressure is too high. Your stress levels are off the charts. You need to make some changes, man. You're not invincible." But how could Marcus explain that stepping back would mean watching Tyler spiral completely out of control? How could he articulate the guilt he felt at the mere thought of saying no to family requests? His father's voice echoed in his mind constantly, "Family first, Marcus. Always family first." The garage had become his sanctuary, the one place where he was truly himself. His employees, Jorge, who had been with him for 15 years, Dante, a young apprentice with natural talent, and Sarah, his office manager who kept everything running smoothly, they saw the real Marcus. They knew about the television deal because they would be part of it. They knew about his expertise, his reputation in the classic car community, his generous bonuses and fair treatment. "Boss," Jorge had said one day, finding Marcus sitting in his office, head in his hands after a particularly brutal family dinner, "why do you let them treat you like that? Your family, I mean. My kids work here summers, and they see how your nephew talks to you. It's not right." Marcus had looked up, surprised that his pain was so visible. "It's complicated, Jorge." "No, it's not," Jorge had replied with the directness that Marcus had always appreciated. "Respect is simple. You either get it or you don't. And boss, you deserve it more than anyone I know." The conversation had stayed with Marcus, gnawing at him during sleepless nights. When had he become so invisible to the people who were supposed to love him most? When had his sacrifices become expectations, his generosity an entitlement? The answer came to him during a particularly bad headache episode. He had been working on the Shelby, lost in the precision of rebuilding the engine, when the pain had hit him like a sledgehammer. He had gripped the workbench, his vision blurring, and in that moment of physical agony, he had seen his life with startling clarity. He had become invisible the moment he had started making himself small to make others feel big. Every time he had downplayed his success to avoid making Robert feel threatened. Every time he had absorbed Tyler's insults without defending himself. Every time he had paid a bill quietly without mentioning it, solved a problem without taking credit, suffered an indignity without protest. Marcus had built his own prison, bar by bar, with his misguided notion that love meant accepting disrespect, that family meant being a doormat. His father had been wrong, or perhaps his father had never faced family members who saw kindness as weakness, generosity as obligation. The television producers called that afternoon, excited about the progress on the Shelby. They wanted to start filming in 2 weeks, to capture the final stages of the restoration. Marcus agreed, but asked them to keep his identity concealed until the show aired. He had his reasons, plans that were forming in his mind like an engine coming together, piece by piece. The school board meeting was supposed to be routine. Marcus had been invited to speak about establishing an automotive program at the local technical high school, a project he had been developing with the principal for months. He had prepared a presentation, lined up equipment donations, even secured commitments from local dealerships to provide internship opportunities. What Marcus hadn't prepared for was the panic attack that hit him in the parking lot. His chest had tightened, his breathing became shallow, and the world had started spinning. He had managed to call Jorge, who had rushed over and taken him to the emergency room. The tests had revealed what Dr. Jerome had been warning about: dangerously high blood pressure, stress-induced arrhythmia, and the early stages of what could become a serious cardiac condition if left untreated. As Marcus lay in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, he had called Tyler. Not for sympathy, but for a simple favor. Could Tyler pick up Marcus's prescription from the pharmacy and drop it off at his house? Marcus couldn't drive for 48 hours, and the medication was critical. "Are you serious right now?" Tyler had responded, his voice thick with irritation and something else, the slur of intoxication. "I'm in the middle of something. Can't you get an Uber or something?" "Tyler, I'm in the hospital. I just need..." "Look, Uncle Marcus, I've got my own problems, okay? My landlord's on my ass about the rent, which, by the way, you said you'd help with this month. So maybe handle your own stuff and remember to transfer that money." The line had gone dead. Marcus had stared at the phone in disbelief, not at Tyler's refusal. He had grown accustomed to those, but at the timing, the complete lack of concern, the transactional nature of what should have been love. Sharon hadn't answered her phone. Angela had been too busy with a charity function. Robert had actually laughed, saying, "Come on, Marcus, it's just a prescription. You're being dramatic." In the end, Sarah from the garage had picked up his medication, brought him home, and stocked his refrigerator with groceries. Jorge and Dante had taken turns checking on him. His employees, the people he paid, had shown more care than the family he had supported for 3 decades. But the real blow came 2 days later. While recovering at home, Marcus had received a call from his bank. There had been unusual activity on one of his credit cards, the one he had given Tyler for emergencies: $8,000 in charges at a casino in Atlantic City, $3,000 at a strip club, $2,000 in cash advances. Marcus had checked his other accounts. Tyler had been systematically draining them, small amounts over time that had accelerated in recent weeks. The total was staggering, nearly $50,000 in the past year alone, on top of the regular support Marcus provided. But even that wasn't the worst discovery. Going through his mail, Marcus had found a letter from a law firm. Tyler was being sued for damages related to a DUI accident 3 months ago, an accident Tyler had never mentioned. The victim was seeking $100,000 in damages, and Tyler had listed Marcus as a co-defendant, claiming Marcus owned the vehicle. He did, and had negligently allowed an intoxicated person to drive it. Marcus sat in his living room, the letter trembling in his hands, and felt something inside him break. Not his heart, that had been breaking for years. This was different. This was the shattering of chains he hadn't even realized he was wearing. He thought about his father, about the mantra of family first that had guided his entire life. But his father had never faced this. His father's family had been poor but proud, struggling but supportive. His father had died surrounded by people who loved and respected him, not vultures who saw him as nothing more than a wallet with a pulse. Marcus made a decision that night, sitting alone in his modest house while Tyler partied away his money and his family ignored his crisis. He would no longer be invisible. He would no longer be a victim. He would show them exactly who Marcus Thompson really was. The first phase of Marcus's plan began with a simple phone call to his lawyer, David Chen, who had been handling his business affairs for years and was one of the few people who knew the full extent of Marcus's success. "I need you to do a complete audit of my financial support to my family over the past 10 years, Marcus had said. "Every payment, every bill, every bail bond. Everything." David had paused. "Marcus, are you sure? That's going to be extensive?" "Yes." "Necessary?" "Absolutely." While David worked on the audit, Marcus began the second phase. He contacted the producers of American Classic Revival and accelerated the filming schedule. He wanted the Shelby reveal to coincide with something else he was planning. The third phase was perhaps the most difficult, investigating Tyler's activities. Marcus hired a private investigator, a former Baltimore police detective named Rita Colson, who specialized in financial fraud and substance abuse cases. What Rita uncovered was worse than Marcus had imagined. Tyler wasn't just using drugs, he was dealing them. Small time, but enough to fund his lifestyle when Marcus's money wasn't sufficient. He had been using Marcus's garage as a meeting point after hours, telling his associates that he owned the place, that his old man just worked there. The surveillance footage Rita obtained showed Tyler entering the garage with a spare key Marcus didn't know he had, conducting transactions in the very place Marcus had built with his sweat and sacrifice. But the most damaging discovery came from Tyler's social media accounts and text messages, which Rita had legally obtained through the lawsuit discovery process. Tyler had been bragging to friends about his stupid uncle who funds everything and doesn't even realize how much I take. In one particularly cruel exchange, Tyler had written, "The old fool probably has a heart attack every time he pays my bills, but he'll never stop. It's like he lives to serve me. Pathetic, really. But hey, his money spends just fine." Marcus had read those words in his office, alone after hours, and had felt the last of his familial obligation dissolve like oil in degreaser. This wasn't a troubled young man who needed help. This was a parasite who had mistaken kindness for weakness, love for servitude. The audit David completed was comprehensive and damning. Over the past 30 years, Marcus had provided $420,000 in direct support to Tyler, $180,000 in mortgage payments for Sharon's house, $75,000 in Sharon's rehabilitation and medical bills, $60,000 in loans to Angela that were never repaid, $40,000 in various family emergencies, $30,000 in family vacation expenses. The total was over $800,000, not including the everyday expenses, the dinners he paid for, the gifts he gave, the free automotive service he provided to the entire extended family. But here was the revelation that would change everything. Marcus had done all of this while never revealing his true financial position. The family believed he was a struggling mechanic living paycheck to paycheck, making these sacrifices at great personal cost. They had no idea about his $2.8 million television contract, his $3.2 million investment portfolio, his $1.5 million classic car collection, his ownership of the entire building where his garage operated, plus 2 other commercial properties in Baltimore, his annual income from high-end restorations that averaged $400,000. Marcus had been playing the part of the poor relative while secretly being the wealthiest person in the family by a significant margin. He had done this partly out of humility, partly to avoid becoming an even bigger target for financial requests, but mostly because he had believed that his family's love shouldn't be contingent on his success. He had been naive. The family dinner where everything began to unravel was, ironically, meant to celebrate Tyler's 29th birthday. Angela had pulled out all the stops, catered food, expensive wine, a cake from the boutique bakery that charged $200 for what Marcus could have gotten at the grocery store for $30. Marcus arrived on time, which should have been the first sign that something was different. He usually came late to minimize his exposure to the pre-dinner ridicule. But tonight, he walked in at exactly 6 p.m., wearing a new suit that fit him perfectly, his shoes shined, his presence somehow different. "Marcus?" Angela had said, surprised. "You look nice." "Thank you," Marcus had replied simply, taking his usual seat without explanation. Tyler arrived an hour late, high as usual, with a new girlfriend who looked barely legal and seemed equally intoxicated. He slouched into his chair, pointed at Marcus, and laughed. "Uncle Marcus got dressed up for my birthday. What, did you close the shop early? Lose some money just to look presentable for once?" "Actually," Marcus said calmly, cutting his steak, "I did close the shop early. Had to meet with my lawyers. The table went quiet for a moment. Robert laughed nervously. Lawyers? What, someone suing you for a bad break job? No, Marcus replied. I'm being sued because of Tyler's DUI accident 3 months ago. The one he never mentioned. Apparently, I'm liable because I own the car he crashed while intoxicated. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler's face went pale, then red. Sharon gasped. Angela looked between Marcus and Tyler in confusion. I don't know what you're talking about, Tyler stammered. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled to a photo, and slid it across the table. It was the police report. Blood alcohol level of 0.18, Marcus read aloud. Cocaine in your system. The other driver has permanent back injuries. And you never said a word. Marcus, Sharon began, her voice shaking. I'm sure Tyler was going to. Tell me? Like he told me about using my garage for drug deals? Marcus pulled out another photo, a still from the security footage. Or maybe like he told me about the $50,000 he's stolen from my accounts in the past year alone? The room erupted. Tyler jumped up, his chair falling backward. You've been spying on me? No, Tyler. I've been documenting your crimes. There's a difference. Robert tried to regain control. Now, Marcus, let's not get carried away. Family doesn't. Family? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what this is? Because from where I sit, this looks like a group of people who've mistaken my generosity for weakness, my love for servitude. He stood up, pulling a folder from his jacket. David Chin prepared this for me. It's a complete accounting of every dollar I've given to this family over the past 30 years. $800,000 in direct support. Nearly $1 million when you factor in everything else. He dropped the folder on the table. Pages spilled out, bank statements, canceled checks, receipts. But here's the interesting part, Marcus continued, his voice steady and cold. You all thought I was poor. You thought I was sacrificing everything to help you. The truth is, I could have given 10 times that amount without feeling it. Angela's hand went to her mouth. What are you saying? I'm saying that I own the building my garage is in, plus 2 others. I'm saying that I have a car collection worth more than Robert's house. I'm saying that in 3 weeks, I'll be appearing on national television as one of the featured restoration experts on American Classic Revival, with a contract worth $2.8 million. The silence was absolute. Even Tyler had stopped moving, his mouth open in shock. You all treated me like I was nothing, Marcus continued. Like I was just a wallet with a pulse, a servant to be mocked and ridiculed while you spent my money. Well, congratulations. You finally succeeded in teaching me a lesson, just not the one you intended. Marcus's exit from that dinner was the last time he would ever attend a family gathering. But his plan was far from complete. The revelation at dinner had been just the opening salvo. The next morning, Tyler woke up to find his apartment's locks changed. The lease was in Marcus's name, always had been. The eviction notice was taped to the door, giving Tyler 30 days to vacate. His car, also in Marcus's name, had been repossessed during the night. Sharon received a certified letter informing her that the life insurance policy that had been paying her mortgage had been a fiction, that Marcus had been making the payments, and that those payments would cease at the end of the month. She had 30 days to secure her own financing or face foreclosure. Angela discovered that the investment Marcus had made in her husband's first real estate project, $60,000 that had been crucial to getting it off the ground, came with a clause. If Marcus ever called in the loan, it was due immediately with interest. The letter from David Chin informed them that the full amount, now $95,000 with interest, was due in 60 days. But Marcus wasn't vindictive without purpose. Each letter came with an option. Tyler could avoid criminal prosecution for the thefts and drug dealing if he entered a legitimate rehabilitation program, one he would have to pay for himself. Sharon could receive a one-time payment of $50,000 to help with her transition if she signed a document acknowledging Marcus's past support and agreeing to no further contact. Angela and Robert could have the loan forgiven if they simply acknowledged, in writing, the extent of Marcus's generosity over the years. Not one of them took the olive branch. Tyler, in his drug-fueled rage, tried to break into the garage one night, not knowing that Marcus had changed all the locks and upgraded the security system. He was arrested on the spot, the surveillance footage showing clear intent to commit burglary. The police also found drugs in his possession, enough to charge him with intent to distribute. Sharon, rather than acknowledge Marcus's help, went to the family with a sob story about how Marcus had tricked her all these years, how he had manipulated her into dependence. She tried to rally the extended family against him, painting him as a cruel man who had hidden his wealth while watching them struggle. Angela and Robert consulted a lawyer, trying to claim that the loan had been a gift, that Marcus was rewriting history. They attempted to countersue, claiming emotional distress and breach of verbal contract. Each action only proved Marcus's point and strengthened his resolve. While his family imploded, Marcus thrived. The filming of American Classic Revival began, and Marcus threw himself into the work with a passion that had been dormant for years. The Shelby restoration was magnificent, every detail perfect, every component authentic, every surface gleaming. The producers were amazed at Marcus's transformation. The quiet, reserved mechanic they had first met had become a confident, articulate expert who commanded respect. His segments were the highlight of the show's first episode. "This 1967 Shelby GT 500 isn't just a car," Marcus said to the camera, his hands moving lovingly over the restored vehicle. "It's a piece of American history, a testament to what's possible when passion meets precision. Every bolt, every wire, every panel tells a story. My job is to make sure that story continues for future generations." The episode aired 3 months after the family dinner disaster. Marcus hosted a viewing party at the garage, inviting his employees, his true friends, and several clients who had become close over the years. The room was full of people who genuinely cared about him, who celebrated his success without resentment or entitlement. Jorge raised a beer to the boss, who finally stopped hiding his light under a bushel. The show was a massive success. Marcus became something of a celebrity in the automotive world. Orders poured in from collectors around the country. He hired 5 new employees, expanded the garage, and started a program for at-risk youth to learn automotive skills, the program he had originally planned to propose at that fateful school board meeting. His health improved dramatically. Without the constant stress of family drama, his blood pressure normalized, the headaches disappeared, and he lost 20 pounds. He started dating Linda, a literature professor at Johns Hopkins who had brought her classic Mustang to him for restoration. She appreciated him for who he was, not what he could provide. "You know what I love about you?" Linda said one evening as they watched the sunset from his new house, a beautiful Craftsman he had bought in cash in Bolton Hill. "You're genuine. So many people pretend to be something they're not. You're just you." Marcus thought about the years he had pretended to be less than he was, had made himself small to make others comfortable. "I wasn't always," he admitted. "But I am now." Tyler's trial made the local news. Baltimore man charged with drug distribution and theft from family business. The story that emerged painted a picture of entitlement and betrayal that shocked even the seasoned court reporters. Marcus testified, calmly and factually, about the extent of Tyler's thefts and the drug dealing that had taken place at his garage. Tyler's lawyer tried to paint Marcus as a vengeful uncle who had abandoned a troubled young man. But the evidence was overwhelming: the security footage, the bank records, the text messages where Tyler had bragged about exploiting his uncle. The judge was particularly moved by a statement Marcus made during his testimony. "Your Honor, I loved my nephew like a son. I gave him everything: education, opportunities, support through multiple rehabilitation attempts. But love without respect isn't love, it's enabling. And respect without boundaries isn't respect, it's servitude. I had to learn that the hard way." Tyler was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 3. As he was led away, he looked at Marcus with pure hatred. Marcus felt nothing but sadness, not for what was lost, but for what had never really existed. Sharon lost her house and moved in with a cousin in Virginia. She continued to tell anyone who would listen about how Marcus had destroyed the family, but fewer and fewer people believed her as the truth emerged. Angela and Robert's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, the judge noting that their claim was without merit and borders on frivolous. The stress of the legal battle and the financial strain of repaying Marcus's loan put pressure on their marriage. The last Marcus heard, they were in counseling, their perfect facade cracked beyond repair. But Marcus didn't celebrate their downfall. He simply moved on, focusing on his business, his new relationship, and the life he was building free from toxic obligations. The youth program he started at the garage became a model for similar programs nationwide. Kids who reminded him of himself, smart but overlooked, talented but without opportunities, learned not just how to fix cars but how to value themselves, how to set boundaries, how to demand respect through their actions and expertise. One young man, Jamal, particularly touched Marcus's heart. Jamal had been heading down a path similar to Tyler's when he entered the program. But unlike Tyler, Jamal was hungry to learn, grateful for the opportunity, and respectful of the knowledge Marcus shared. "Mr. Thompson," Jamal said one day, working beside Marcus on a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda, "why do you do this?" "The program, I mean. You could make more money just doing regular restorations." Marcus considered the question. "My father taught me that family comes first." He was right, but I misunderstood what he meant. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who see your worth, who respect your sacrifice, who build you up instead of tearing you down. You kids, my employees, the clients who become friends, you're my family now. And I'll always put you first. 5 years later, Marcus stood in his expanded garage, now a full restoration facility with 15 employees and a waiting list that stretched 2 years out. The walls were covered with awards, magazine covers featuring his work, and photos from car shows around the country. His appearance on American Classic Revival had become legendary in the automotive world. He had been invited to judge at prestigious car shows, to speak at conferences, to consult for museums. But more importantly, he had found peace. Linda had become his wife 2 years ago in a small ceremony attended only by their chosen family, Jorge and his family, Sarah and her husband, Dante and his girlfriend, and several other close friends. No blood relatives were invited or missed. His health had completely recovered. At 58, he was in better shape than he had been at 40. The stress that had been slowly killing him was gone, replaced by the satisfaction of living authentically. Tyler had been released from prison after serving 3 years. He had written Marcus a letter, not of apology but asking for money to start fresh. Marcus had not responded. He heard through mutual acquaintances that Tyler was working at a car wash in Florida, still blaming everyone else for his problems, still waiting for someone to save him. Sharon had remarried and moved to Texas. She had tried to reconnect when she learned about Marcus's television success, sending a long email about family forgiveness and moving forward. Marcus had blocked her email address without reading past the first line. Angela had divorced Robert after he had an affair with a client. She had reached out once, a tentative phone call where she had almost apologized. But the conversation had ended with her asking if Marcus could help out, just this once, for old time's sake. He had declined and changed his number the next day. Standing in his garage, Marcus thought about his father one more time. Samuel Thompson had been right, family did come first. But Marcus had learned something his father perhaps never had to: sometimes the family you choose is more family than the family you're born into. The Shelby GT 500 that had started it all sat in his personal collection, a reminder of the moment his life had truly begun. He had received offers of over $1 million for it, but it wasn't for sale. It was his freedom symbol, his phoenix emblem, his proof that resurrection was possible at any age. Jamal, now his lead apprentice and surrogate son in all but blood, came over with a tablet. "Mr. T, we got an interesting request." A collector in Japan wants us to restore a 1969 Boss 429. He's offering double our usual rate if we can prioritize it. Marcus smiled. What do you think we should do? Jamal considered, just as Marcus had taught him, weighing options, considering consequences, respecting the craft above the money. I think we take it. Not for the money, but because it's a car that deserves our best work. That's my boy, Marcus said, and meant it. As the sun set over Baltimore, casting golden light through the garage windows, Marcus Thompson stood surrounded by the life he had built from the ashes of the one he had burned down. He had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away, and sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save everyone else. His phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Dinner at 7? That new Italian place? He texted back, perfect. I love you. She responded immediately, I love you too. For who you are, not what you provide. Marcus smiled, pocketed his phone, and got back to work. There were cars to restore, young people to mentor, and a life to live, fully, authentically, and finally, on his own terms. The mechanic who had been invisible for so long had become impossible to ignore. Not through revenge, but through the simple act of choosing himself. And in that choice, he had found not just liberation, but the family he had always deserved, one built on respect, mutual support, and genuine love. As he worked, Marcus thought one last time about his father's words, family first. Yes, Dad, he whispered to the memory. Family first. I just had to learn what family really means.